This is a bubble that will burst, so they announced that they had 353,000 jobs in April. However, discreetly in the middle of the night, Midnight Bar breaks the news, stating that the report was inaccurate. The government then gradually and obliquely corrected itself after announcing that they had 353,000 jobs, making the government appear wait until we show you the statistics on this one. Americans are earning phantom dead multiple job holders' primary jobs full-time. The numbers you see are record-breaking. We also have another statistic that came up that we need to discuss. Recall from COVID that American savings is at an all-time high. There are currently $2.1 trillion in savings, and they are paying off debt. As a result, you will notice that credit card debt is decreasing, which is a smart move. UBI, and let's wait a few years to see how Americans manage their finances, because if there's one thing we know for sure, it's that most people are experts at spending money and don't know how to save it. However, the percentage of U.S. mortgages that are considered seriously underwater will shock you when we show you the data. Rises the surprising statistic of the day. Since August of 2021, the U.S. economy has lost $2.1 trillion in surplus savings. Because then, U.S. consumers have been draining their savings at a rate of $70 billion per month, which would leave them negative $72 billion by March 2024. Many would argue that because they are taking this money and using it to pay off debt, what is wrong with us draining our savings at the same time? U.S. savings rates fell from 3.2% to 1.2%, yet credit card debt increased from $330 billion to a record $1.1 trillion. This indicates that a fire sale is imminent, as seen by the table that shows the savings we achieved during the COVID-19 pandemic. We've gone from nothing in 2020 to the start of a screaming roller coaster, and it's skyrocketing. Then they began to release data showing that we're paying off credit card debt back to minus $72 billion, which is where we are. Clearly, the buyout and pay later strategies aren't helping. But when someone runs out of cash and savings, guess what happens next? A fire sale. I'll discuss some of the other data that has generated a lot of commentary. On this, I've been seeing this coming, and it's been extremely frightening. This means that as COVID stopped, you need to consider the consumer's emotions. As soon as COVID stopped, we heard statements like, you can go back out and play, you can travel, you can go to restaurants, and things like that. People also started working at restaurants again, but these were not new jobs. Rather, they were just returning to their previous positions. They began to spend, forgetting what it was like to have their credit cards paid off and have some money in the bank thanks to the government. But to them, the typical consumer's reaction was apparently, this is free money. So they spent it and kept spending it, and now we find themselves in a situation where last year, you can verify this fact by looking up any number of newspapers, including USA Today. You don't even need to study the Wall Street Journal to learn that last year's consumer spending by Americans saved the economy in 2023. We spent our savings on goods, plane tickets, Disneyland tickets, which I've never visited, and other similar purchases. We saved the economy last year because consumer spending in 2023 was out of control, but we were also using our savings to accrue credit card debt through buy now, pay later purchases. And now that the American consumer has reached a tipping point, not quite, they are feeling the squeeze. What will happen next? How will the consumer spend its way through the summer of 24 to support the economy? The answer is no. Defense expenditures may be able to, but not them. The second aspect of the feeling is that the stock market performed fairly well last year, so most individuals probably talked to their HR department and asked, hey, how's our 401k? You are aware of typical investment funds. This is only a savings account for cash checks. It does not include their 401k funds. Well, that's rather good. We had a 22% year, so that's definitely a lie. Personal obstacles. Once you are able to begin saving money, set aside $10,000. The other half are like $10K. I have $300K in the bank, but very few people can accomplish that. The amazing half are like $10K. How the heck am I going to get there? Finally, you can start investing once you reach green. Personal finance. personal responsibility, and self-reliance are terms used for a reason, and they all apply to you, bro. You know the saying that says 20% of people are delighted that you have them save that money, and 80% of people don't give a damn about your problems. Well, when you think about the principles of money, that makes a lot of sense. The fundamentals of money watch what happened here, and consider who else might be impacted when savings decline. My father used to say, listen, a man without savings is not a man. There's a part of a man that feels like he lost his manhood when you don't have savings. He also advised always having money on hand, because no one knows you have it, not your spouse, your family, or anyone else. When the insurance company was about to go out of business, I had a stack of cash that I had set aside, and that's what kept the business afloat. If I didn't have the extra $13,000, we would not be in business. There would be no valuetainment, and there would be no podcast on PMD. I'm probably selling gym memberships right now someplace. Don't get me wrong. I'm a huge fan of gym memberships. But here's the thing. Fiscally see what takes place, how many people beg to work from home. A lot of them, in fact, so much so that when you give people money and they pay off their debt, they sit at home and cause concern for every company that employs them. You can request work from home, but since you don't have any money left, how will you respond? We experience employee bullying employers during COVID in the most dark, deceptive, and dirty way. I'll walk out of the closet in the office, and can I just get a desk or something? What's the point? Bullying on both sides is not cool. It's not bullying when employers bully. When employees bully one another for the first time, it's not bullying. I had an employee that we hired and given a raise to at let's just round up to the nearest dollar, because this is Texas and this is the insurance. So let's just say $50,000 when we give the employee their wage. 2 months subsequently, he says, I received an offer from another business. You got to bump me up to $80,000 or else. I'm like, does this guy joking? But we need him because we can't get anyone at this time during COVID, so we went up to $70,000. He states, I received another offer for $120,000 2 months later. I'm going to leave if you don't give me $100,000. They hear me say, guys, this guy's gone. He doesn't even work there after leaving the other company he visited, and he has to relocate. Eventually, people realize, dude, you're not $120,000 a year person. You must return because you need to demonstrate your results, even though you are a $55,000 a year person. What this is doing right now is that as savings begin to disappear to the extent that they are, many desperate decisions will be taken. This brings me to a short figure. We've discussed this previously, but the degree of delinquency on this idea needs to be discussed further. People pay attention. This is going to be about Americans accruing phantom debt that Wall Street just cannot keep track of. This is a Bloomberg report. Because buy now, pay later is so popular, phantom debt is on the rise. You frequently hear about BNPL platforms such as Klarna, Clarum, and Affirm. A genuine picture of American households' financial health is obscured by afterpay transactions that aren't recorded to credit agencies. As BNPL rates climb, individuals should be more aware of this. A disagreement between providers and credit bureaus is the cause of BNPL's lack of transparency. BNPL companies are fighting data sharing on the grounds that it could negatively impact their clients' credit scores. The market is still growing in spite of this, making it difficult for economists to analyze consumer spending and debt. BNPL. The allure of installment payments draws in customers. Nonetheless, a Harris Poll survey indicates some alarming trends due to BNPL spending insanity. 28% of borrowers are past due on other loans, and 43% are behind on their buyout pay later installments. To understand this, let's start with the following. BNPL companies, who are capitalists, are resisting data disclosure because they believe it could negatively impact consumer credit scores. They argue that this should happen if consumers are already overdrawn on their credit cards and BNPL wants to lend them more money. These companies also want to make money, so they'd want to lend the money. However, some are stating that perhaps we shouldn't because we want to perform a soft credit evaluation and don't want to reveal the information. Thus, it can lower credit scores. You guessed it, Credit scores are vital signs, much like blood pressure or temperature. ISAC, FICO, and FAIR, all of that was a vital sign designed to assess a consumer's financial health and capability. So when BNPL companies argue that they don't want to disclose data that could lower their credit score, that should lower their credit score because those consumers are borrowing more money when their credit score is already low due to excessive credit card use, as evidenced by the Harris poll. How many of these consumers are essentially acknowledging that they lack financial literacy or self-control and that they struggle to keep to a monthly spending plan? I was shocked to learn how much I owe on BNPL each month. How can you figure that I've fallen behind on other credit lines, gone into debt, and my spending is out of control when you can't even divide $500 for a TV by 5 months and recognize it's $100 a month? Observe that about 3, 4, and 5 of these are people who are openly expressing that they are completely inept, uneducated, or out of control. This is a tremendous, huge problem. I think it's great that you're discussing this and observing the situation. Effects of buy now, pay later, however, as much as you see a report like this, he said something earlier, one can say it's not fair. It's BNPL's fault. It's Klarna's fault. It's all these companies' fault. Subsequent service consumers detailed a variety of ways in which the products negatively impacted their budgets. Number 1, 54% spend way more than I can afford. Of course. Number 2 is worse off financially. 34% find it difficult stick into monthly budget. Bewildered by how much I owe on BNPL hurt my credit score. Fallen behind on my other lines of credit. Significant debt. My spending is out of control. You weren't compelled to use it. Nobody forced you to make the decision. You decided to use it and go buy those Christmas presents you couldn't afford. No one coerced me into purchasing an automobile that I couldn't afford, which I ultimately lost. I chose to purchase an Expedition with a $600 car payment when my annual income was only $30,000. Once I made that decision, I entered the $49,000 range. I had to adjust my perspective on money and my relationship with it, but many people continue to place the blame elsewhere. Why is this happening rather than accepting full responsibility for it? It's not simple, but some of us had to do it. This buy now, pay later is an abbreviation that I love. BNPL, it's genuinely broke now and poor later. But in the end, you're responsible for it. So there's another phrase you should understand. I thought, okay, I'm pretty astute when it comes to personal finance. They dubbed this one, which is new money. Money dysmorphia. This is a novel concept that essentially indicates that your understanding of your financial situation is skewed. And Gen Z is causing it to spread rapidly. This is reported by 41% of millennials and indicates a rise in Gen Z. What is money dysmorphia then? There's a difference between your really financial situation and what you think you have based on TikTok feeds, which have a direct effect on you. We are grateful for China's overall well-being, as evidenced by the statistics released. 2/3 of paycheck to paycheck 50% of Americans lack $400 in emergency funds. Just 50% of Americans actually invest. 25% of Americans do not have $1,000 in savings. Therefore, you must decide if you want to be a member of the rich get richer or the poor become poorer group. I made the decision when I was broke to get my head right, which leads to getting money right, and the rich become richer. So what is the solution to all these issues that you guys claim people are saving by doing the purchase now, pay later thing, which is going to cause problems? I understand that he is referring to the fire sale, but in general, there will be more poverty, a greater reliance on the government, a messed up economy, messed up housing, and a bubble that will burst. If this sounds like a bubble that will burst, you're not incorrect, because there is another story that makes a perfect transition into what you're discussing. The proportion of U.S. mortgages deemed substantially underwater is rising. This is not good, right? This is not good. So while you're witnessing it, everyone says, oh, this is not going to happen, meaning that nobody anticipated it would occur. In the first quarter of 2024, the percentage of substantially underwater mortgages in the U.S. grew from 2.6% to 2.7%. Kentucky saw the largest increase, going from 2% to 8.3%, followed by West Virginia at 5.4% and Oklahoma at 5.5 to 6.1. Louisiana with 11.3% of substantially underwater mortgages and 8.8% of equity. Wyoming had the highest percentages of these loans. The percentage of rich mortgages fell to 45.8%, a 2-year low. This is the state of some marketplaces. Prices increased dramatically in some markets, such as Texas and Florida, while they increased more moderately in other markets. Recall the spike in interest rates that everyone saw immediately following the COVID-19 pandemic. In these slower-growing markets, as you can imagine, people went out and purchased homes first. This is why these statistics are found in Kentucky and Oklahoma. West Virginia, Louisiana people in Wyoming went out and obtained mortgages at rates of 6, 3/4, and 7%. Those mortgages are pricey, and now that the markets have declined, the mortgages are underwater, albeit at higher interest rates. Those folks might not be able to refinance because of the requirements. You must obtain an appraisal. If you are unable to obtain an appraisal that will exceed the mortgage's value, you will be stuck with the 7% mortgage while the property's value has decreased. In other words, following the COVID-19 pandemic, a large number of people purchased homes. However, because home prices were declining at the time, not all of them did so, and the majority of those who did so now have underwater mortgages due to the high equity in their mortgages. Oh, my mortgage is only 50% because I have so much equity in my house that equity is decreasing. As a result, we're witnessing a moderation in prices, and people will soon find themselves in a tight spot because they won't be able to refinance their way out of an expensive mortgage. An underwater mortgage, on the other hand, means that you owe more on paper than the house is actually worth. That's not good. For example, if you paid $500,000 for a house and put down $100,000, the house is worth $399,000. Which means that on paper that $100,000 you put down is gone. This is the issue I have with those who are purchasing homes. You know the old saying, if it was easy, everyone would do it. Well, here's a little interesting fact for you. You think you could just go into a real estate investment and say, I just became a millionaire. But it doesn't work that easy. The main point I want to make is that if you spend more money than you can afford, it will show in your foreclosure. For example, if you can't pay your rent, you will be kicked out. Similarly, if you can't afford your mortgage, the bank will take over your loan and you will have to move. Maybe you should have bought a $350,000 house instead of a $500,000 one because you felt, oh, I don't want to live in this little crappy house. I want to live in a big house, or something similar. However, maybe you should have stopped at a $1 million house rather than a $2 million one. As a result, you ended up buying more than you could afford. You understand, listen, that while I had assumed I could afford a $5,000 monthly mortgage payment, they neglected to mention taxes, insurance, and homeowners association dues. As a result, the American dream of owning a home suddenly turned into an American nightmare. However, I want to emphasize that it's crucial that you guys understand this message, because sometimes you hear something like this, and it's like, dude, I know I'm in it right now, and I feel like, and you're making me feel even more like But I also want you to consider that at one point, everyone seated at this table had nothing going on. In those cases, the best thing to do is make the necessary changes to overcome arrogance, because there aren't many traits more unattractive than arrogance, such as entitlement, victimization, or the desire to place blame on others. However, arrogance is banished from you, God willing, when you reach your lowest point and lose everything. All the recognition and accolades in the world, all the fame in the world, you're out. And if you buy into that, you'll end up back where you started. Therefore, if you're watching this right now and asking yourself, man, what do I do with this? Remember that everything begins with habits. Think about your daily routine, what you're spending money on, and literally take your credit and debit cards with you and your spouse. Take a seat, look over every expense item by item, and cut them off. Take a look at your iPhone. Did you realize that you can manage your subscriptions there? How many of us have unused subscriptions floating about from the last year? You have been paying $10 a month or $8 a month for 2, 3, or more years, but you downloaded an app and forgot that it was $9.99, $49.99, or $29.99. It's actually very easy to manage all of your subscription payments on your phone. All you have to do is take some time to sit down and go through everything you're paying for. And then the really hard part is that I'm talking to this one guy who used to be a stud in his line of work. He says, "Man, what do I do?" I said, "Dude, if you got to do Uber for the next 6 months, 2 hours at night from 10 to 1 o'clock, you got to do it. You got a wife and kids, Pat. You want me to do Uber. Nobody put you in this situation, so yeah, you got to get out of it. You got to go Uber." I was selling shirts. When I had nothing, I would advertise only my chest, biceps, and abs. I would advertise everything else, but I could legally advertise because I would buy it for $2 in downtown and sell one for $15 and two for $20, and people would buy it. That's how I was making money to get out of it. If you're going through it, you're going to have to do certain things that might go against your pride and ego, and it will hurt you a lot. But nothing is more important than keeping your word and putting your family's safety first. Therefore, it is what you and I are accountable for. Doing. We elected to be parents, spouses, and leaders, and sometimes that means making difficult decisions and swallowing our pride. But we must do it. The idea of sequencing is among the best things I've learned from Paid. As the classic saying goes, you have to walk before you run before you sprint. I lead individuals through these 6 rules of wealth, starting with the rule of 3. As I mentioned earlier, think of a traffic light with 3 colors: red, yellow, and green. Sprint before you run a marathon. People frequently invest when they should be paying off debt because they've been told to do so, because they've been told to get a 401. But you have credit card debt of 22%, stop investing. Or, hey, you should be saving, not investing right now. Hey, now's the time to invest. However, these individuals are not following the proper sequence. Instead, they should be following the practical order. I told you that if you're having trouble making ends meet, take action to boost your market worth within the organization and acquire new skills that will enable you to contribute more to its success. Everyone is trying to raise their net worth, but they aren't attempting to repair their income or their expenditure. You have to take action to take advantage of this. In order to be able to accomplish some of these other things, you need to grow your income. As we reach the end of our deep dive into Patrick Bet-David's compelling analysis of the collapse that will change a generation, it's clear that his insights are both sobering and enlightening. Bet-David elucidates the multifaceted factors contributing to a potential economic collapse, ranging from escalating national debt to geopolitical tensions and technological disruptions. His perspective underscores the urgency for individuals and businesses to prepare for significant shifts that could reshape the economic landscape for generations to come. Bet-David's discussion is a wake-up call, emphasizing the need for proactive strategies to safeguard assets and capitalize on emerging opportunities amidst uncertainty. He advocates for diversification, continuous education, and staying informed about global economic trends. By understanding the potential triggers and impacts of such a collapse, investors and entrepreneurs can better navigate the challenges and seize the opportunities that arise during times of upheaval. One of the key takeaways from Bet-David's analysis is the importance of resilience and adaptability. In an era where change is the only constant, those who are prepared to pivot and innovate will be best positioned to thrive. This message is particularly relevant for younger generations, who will bear the brunt of these economic transformations, but also have the greatest potential to drive positive change. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Patrick Bet-David's thought-provoking predictions. If you found this video valuable, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel, Investing Tutorial. By subscribing, you'll stay updated with the latest insights, expert analyses, and strategies to help you navigate the ever-evolving financial landscape. Your support helps us continue to bring you high-quality content designed to inform and empower your investment decisions.